We're back with Tele number 3. Little update on a couple of issues that I wanted to point out. First thing is that over time I've gotten a little, see if you can hear this, a little telltale twang because of the nut. I had put the string tree in and it worked. I didn't have that, and then all of a sudden, I don't know, last couple of months sitting around, whatever, in the case mostly, I've used it a few times, all of a sudden I took it out and I was doing my last song and I noticed this twang. Luckily I didn't have to have any open high E strings. So I'm going to have to work with that nut and see if I can slot it down. If I was to move the string tree up, which I don't want to drill another hole, it will solve the problem. Just the angle. So I'm going to see if I can fix that. I do not have nut files, so I'm going to have to improvise as I usually try to do. The other bigger issue that has come to light is these vintage bridges that they sell. Get a good angle on it and some light. So these vintage bridges that they sell for these vintage styled guitar bodies, it was pretty nice, except for the fact of all the muck that was on it initially. Now, the problem with it now is the length of screws. The screws on these things, there's 3 different lengths of screws, from 1.5 inches to an inch and 4/8, and then 1 1/4 inches, and there's 2 sets like that. Now, in order to get this thing intonated properly, the barrels had to be almost completely seated back against the spring, completely compressed, and that caused the screws sticking out there so far, and because of the radiusing, an adjustment of the string height over this area, the screws are sticking up and are actually touching the string if I try to bend them or down actually. So they're that close, you know, which is problematic. So one of 2 things has happened, which I suspect. Either this bridge was made wrong, which is unlikely, but the most likely problem is the fact that the actual routing of the pocket was too far forward for the neck pickup, and where they installed all the holes for the string throughs should have been a little bit further back, giving you a little bit more adjustment area up here for those, and then those screws would have sat a little bit more horizontal to the body. So the first thing I'm going to try is replacing the screws. I purchased screws for, these are humbucker installation screws that I bought some months ago in case I was ever going to need them. They're 3 millimeters. Screws and threads, and of course these are all metric, so they should work. I recently had to take screws out of the Cozart that I'm working on, which were extremely short, and I replaced them with these 1 inches, which on that bridge I think is going to work. Allow me to intonate. So now this one, see, all these springs are pretty much mostly all compressed. So I'm going to try to remove these screws and put in these 1 inchers and see if they will give me the distance away from the string without touching them. It can't be worse than what's on there now. So I'm going to do that, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, a quick look in the middle of my work. The it's possible to get the screws out one at a time. So I took out the D string screw, which is the longest one that was impinging the string, and a comparison how long the original is compared to the 1-incher that I'm putting in. Now I'm finding that even the 1-incher that I'm putting in is still sticking up at quite an angle, that once I put this under tension it might just skirt over the top of it, and that's because of the radiusing of the neck. Now the issue that I think is causing that is that the neck is sitting too high in the pocket. Again, that would be likely the routing of the neck as a spec problem, or the thickness of the neck as a potential problem, or a combination of both. But I could see the solution as being dismantling the neck again, sanding out the bottom of the pocket to get it down a millimeter, or around a 1/64 of an inch, to be able to allow these barrels to and screws to be down a little bit lower to match the radius of the neck. Something to think about going forward if this doesn't solve the problem. So I'm looking here, the high E string is not impinged at where it is. The B string I'm going to change. I'm not going to change the low E string because that one is sitting the flattest. Yeah, both edges where the radius is at the lowest point, not causing a problem for either one of those strings. So it looks like I'm going to have to just do the 4 in the middle of those. And these springs are quite long. They got a very good tension on them. When you put them on, they're a little bit longer than the screw. And fighting this to be able to get the barrel in down there is quite something. I've had a spring fly all over as it is, and I don't want to lose it. So in order to get this on, I've loosened the strings. I tried doing it under tension. I just couldn't get any movement. The screw was starting to come out, but I was having trouble with maneuvering the barrel. I wanted to try to keep the intonation in place as close as possible. Didn't work out. So I found that on the first one, if I turn the barrel upside down with the set screws pointing up, I can get on with my screwdriver with an extension. Hold that screw in place and then try to line up the threads and start screwing on it. Oh, completely gone down in the middle of the spring, and this is like the trial and terror part of it, trying to find the hole to get the screw to start going in. And once you can get it in a few threads, then you can flip it over and screw it in normally. It might have a bite. I think so. Yes, I have a bite. Okay, so now that I've got it on that much, I need the length of the screw to be able to flip it back over before it gets too far down. Get the string up over it, and then screw it all the way back again to around where it was before, almost completely depressed, so that I don't have to work so hard at re-intonating this in the end. The low E string, that spring, it has no more place to go. If I had to go back any further, I'd have to cut some off of that spring to be able to get the barrel back a little bit more to stop it from being flat. So that's probably in there somewhere, not fully compressed. So I'm going to do the other couple like that, and then we'll see how it goes at the back end. Okay, I got all of those screws changed out. I left the low E one in place because it really wasn't an issue. All the rest of them I have been changed out. Let's just see if I can get an angle on that. This way. Yeah, okay, there. So they're all shortened. Intonation has all been redone. For the most part, of course, the intonation location hasn't changed. And yes, the high E string, no more twang. I just had to take my triangle diamond file and just do a little bit of a touch at the back end of the nut to let the string slope over a little bit better. And it worked. And then when I started tightening it up, all of a sudden the B was doing the same thing. So I gave it a touch. And it is seemingly good. I did try the Axmaster nut, and there is some play in there, and I found that if I put a tiny little paper shim, the thickness of a cheap, thin business card, this is from Sparky Superchrome, in between it, this one was just a tad too thin, and a standard business card, a couple of them were just a tad too thick. So it's a specific, but I did, when I put this in, I did validate for sure that it was the nut, because it didn't twang with this one in. And so it's all back together, and now it should be like I want it to be. It's all alright, she's good to go. Wasn't there really anything else I wanted to do on this one? Yeah, I continue to find little peculiarities. I think hopefully that's the end of it. The other thing, like as I mentioned, is the neck pocket. You know, taking that off and trying to sand down that neck pocket is problematic in that hand-wise I'd have to go in there with my little man-made tool that I did on a square dowel, and getting that exactly flat down the thickness that I want is a bit of an issue. A better way, I guess, would be to take down the back of the neck, but then of course you screw up the back of this thing and all this poly, and you just can't take it down from what's going to be hidden underneath the neck. I guess you could in a certain way, but it would be very, very tricky to do that. So I'm going to try to live with it for now and see if I can bend this. Okay. Alright, I can now bend the strings without running into any screw problems. I have a clearance there under each one of them, even where the saddles have to sit so high to get over. And then I do have that, my 64th is on the other side, 16ths. Yeah, they're all, here's 1/16, 16th, 1/16. Yeah, a little bit low there, but so 1/16 is 4/64, right? Yep. So they're all 4/64. I think there isn't any buzzing. Let me just check again. and I adjusted the truss rod on this just last week. Oh yeah, picked up a boo-boo playing with that nut. I originally tried to scribe it with my X-Acto, and I slipped and went right through the top of my finger, right behind the nail. Apparently a very bloody area. Okay guys, that is the latest update on Tele number 3 for now, and back to where I wanted it to be. Cheers.